I cannot help noticing the readjustments to the East Wing, Mr. President, following your visit to Windsor Castle last year. And I'm sorry to say that we British, of course, made our own small attempt at real estate redevelopment of the White House in 1814.
My recollection was that they burned it down. So that's the king at the state dinner last night, of course, at the White House. A beautiful event taking place there. And that was after a long day of the king and the queen visiting the White House speech. It was incredibly charming, I would say. And I know a lot of people are like, kings, no kings. Well, there was one in the White House yesterday. And from what I understand, there's not a king in the White House today. Let's get to a man who was there on the scene for Link Lauren. We've got a political commentator. You were part of the White House press pool yesterday, and I'm really glad to have you on with us. Your podcast is Spot On with Link Lauren. Thanks for being with us this afternoon, Link.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. You know, I was going to make a no kings joke, but I thought maybe someone else would beat me to it.
Sorry. We did have a little fun airing a part of his speech at the beginning. And of course, naturally, all the Democrats stand up and applaud. And it's like, I guess they weren't serious about that either. What was it like to be there? Very different than a normal White House press pool day, I assume, for you yesterday there with the king's presence.
Well, for me, you know, I've covered the royals and the Trumps for about 10 years. So my friends were joking. They were like, this is manifesting at the highest level. Somehow you manifested this convergence of everyone coming together. And it was really just a beautiful moment. I think it transcended partisan politics because the partnership, obviously, the transatlantic partnership has gone in Republican administrations, Democrat administrations. It's just gone throughout history and throughout time. And so it was also really great to see two men similar in age on the world stage at the top of their game who had such respect and admiration for each other. And I thought that was really beautiful, and all the detail and attention to detail the First Lady put in, planning everything. Could really feel that when you were there.
Yeah. You know, there were so many jests back and forth with full acknowledgement of the nation's history, both nations' histories, of course. Not like we had to dance around it. It was like, it is what it is. It's here, but now we're friends. And you know, my understanding is from observation and from reporting, and you can fill us in on this a little bit as well, that there is a true friendship that exists between the king and the queen and President Trump and the First Lady, that there's a real relationship there.
Absolutely. You could feel that camaraderie. And obviously, there are so few people you can probably relate to when you're at that level of attention and press and you're in that sort of bubble, right? Whether you're the president or you're the king of England, there's so few world leaders who can really relate to that. And so I think there is this real camaraderie, and you could just feel that even all the preparation, it wasn't your typical state visit. Like sometimes, you know, they would do for other folks, but you could see that they really enjoyed having each other. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, if they go back to the UK. But remember when they went to Windsor Castle last year, King Charles really rolled out the red carpet and just did an incredible trip for them. And so I'm glad we reciprocated with such a beautiful moment for them as well.
We're speaking with Link Lauren, host of the podcast Spot On with Link Lauren, a must listen to. Go subscribe. You know, I don't know that President Trump is super popular back in the UK. President Trump is a bold person and doesn't pull any punches anywhere. It seems like it might have been easy for the king to say, I just don't know that this is really the best thing for me right now. Is he doing the thing that is the most frowned upon by the activist left? Is he normalizing President Trump?
Well, I don't know. I think he just has respect for him. I think King Charles knows that President Trump respects him. You know, President Trump told the story yesterday about his mother, Mary McLeod Trump, who was from Scotland, and how she really loved King Charles when he was younger and loved the Queen. May she rest in peace. And so that's something I've covered a lot for years as well, is the way his mother really respected the royals and respected the royal family. And it was just a full circle moment. I didn't see any reason for them to not go through with the trip. You know, why? Because there's a situation in Iran, because this is going on. Why cancel a trip? You know, the king is not really an inherently political figure. And so he wasn't going to wade into all of that anyway. He maybe would touch on it delicately, but I thought he really struck a perfect balance.
Yeah, I agree. And it was just a heartwarming day. I'm glad the weather was so beautiful so that they could be
It cleared
outside.
up.
Yeah, eventually. Let's lay out the pictures and the photographs that I saw. I want to talk a little bit about the White House Correspondents Dinner that is what it was. And I want to know what your thoughts are on it, having been at these types of events or in an area where, yesterday they're in the East Room for this dinner. There's a talk about a ballroom, the necessity of it, the vanity of it, whatever it might be. How is everything kind of humming around the White House right now, post White House Correspondents' Dinner?
Well, it's interesting. The people who work with the president and the president himself, they're just very resilient. And unfortunately, this isn't their first rodeo. As President Trump said, this has happened to him before. He's had some experience with this. And so I pray for everyone who works with him, friends of mine and colleagues of mine who work with the president. I pray and think about them often because they're in that pressure cooker and that high stakes environment. But they have such a duty and they feel such a sense of service to the country to do their jobs. I mean, there's not a person in the administration who is not hustling and working. And so I think they will continue to move past this because they're a family at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's difficult to watch and see the normalcy, the business, the show must go on, but the business absolutely has to go on as well. President Trump was adamant about rescheduling in 30 days that dinner. I don't know if you were at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
No.
You weren't at it, but what was your thought about, you're connected to so many of these people. Was there not enough security? Was there not enough thought put into that event? Because it could have been so incredibly worse than it ended up to be.
So what's interesting is a lot of the people I've spoken to who showed me their tickets and had tickets, as even late last night went and met up with some friends who had their tickets, and there didn't seem to be a QR code or a barcode on the ticket, and it seemed that you could easily replicate it. And obviously you're in a hotel with a lot of rooms, and there are guests who haven't been completely vetted, and obviously that's what ended up happening. So I think maybe next time they'll have to just take even more precaution, but I don't want to knock the planners of the event or anybody because I know they put so much work into it. And Secret Service, that room really was secure. I will be honest. I don't think anyone was going to get into that ballroom in the hotel and the halls outside. Yes, unfortunately, but getting to the president in that ballroom, it did seem that Secret Service had that room secure. There are also men in plain clothes with guns who kind of were blending in. And so it was just a horrific incident and something, obviously, I guess now we have to take it to a whole new level. And I think we should build the ballroom. I'm not going to be one of these conservative influencers who's like, we need the ballroom. Everybody do the ballroom. But hell, we actually do need the ballroom.
Well, that's the best link. That is 100%. That right there. It's like, come on, folks. There's some common sense involved in this. And if people are for or against the ballroom, I want people to have educated themselves on what the ballroom actually is instead of just wanting the ballroom because Trump says he wants it or not wanting the ballroom because Trump says that he wants it. There's a real function here. It's not just Donald Trump's life who was in danger in that moment. And like you said, they were able to secure that ballroom, but they're in a hotel. And this guy booked the room at the Hilton Hotel the day he found out Donald Trump was going to be there. I mean, that can't ever happen again.
I think what's really concerning, too, and why they reacted the way they did and ushering them off stage is you don't know if it's a lone gunman or is he working in tandem with other people. There's so many variables and everything's happening in split seconds and nobody knows. And so you had to get them to safety. But no, those images, not to get too emotional, but those images of our First Lady crawling under a table, of Karoline Leavitt crawling off stage 9 months pregnant. Like, that's not who we are. That's not who we are as a country. But this is what happens when we have these radical leftists who are indoctrinated in these online chat rooms and they're pushed with all this propaganda. And you see these polls like from YouGov that show 25% of liberals think political violence is justified. He really thought he was going to be a hero and some type of martyr for the cause because of how warped his thinking was.
Yeah. Host of the podcast Spot On with Link Lauren. We're speaking with Link right now. I'm curious if I don't want to ask you to talk out of school, and certainly you wouldn't have to name any names, but being around in that press pool, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. You're standing around with the ability to potentially talk to people. Did that event shake the press pool that would have been in there for a night that's supposed to be a celebration and a party? Did that change anything, do you think, for some of those folks in the press?
I think some of the members of the press are acting like they went to war. They're really, really belaboring it. I think some of the influencers, I was disgusted with the way they made it all about themselves. I mean, some of the influencers, their behavior afterward was just so tacky, and it's why I don't associate with a lot of them, and I keep to myself. It was very me, 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 me.
Yeah.
You know, even some of the girls who were like filming themselves. Normally, when you're a journalist and you're at an event where there's something horrible unfolding, you're filming those events. You're not taking selfie videos.
Yeah.
And so I really don't have much positive to say about those journalists. I'm glad that everybody is okay and that none of them lost their lives and everyone is doing fine. But it was very interesting to see how some of them really made it about themselves.
Last question before we let you go. We're speaking with Link Lauren. Just to get back a little bit to the events of yesterday, to be in the presence of the King and the Queen who are making this visit in the 250th birthday of our country. Talk to us about some of the attention to detail. You were talking about what Melania, all the touches that she added to the event, and the heartwarming relationship that was that we were able to witness on the other side of the camera. But to be there, talk to us a little bit, set the tone, the scene for us a little bit about what it was like there on the White House grounds.
There wasn't a minute that wasn't planned out. There wasn't a detail that was overlooked. And I think it's because Melania Trump, before she was First Lady, was in fashion and she studied architecture, and she has such an attention to detail that carries over not just through the clothes that she wears, because she looks beautiful and she looks incredible, but into what are we going to do when the king comes over? How are we going to do the state visit, the state dinner? Are we going to go here and do this and do that? And even when she went with the Queen to see the children and discuss education, and they were down at the tennis pavilion, I got to witness that. Everything was meticulously planned out. And to me, that planning is a sign of respect, right?
Yeah.
These folks are coming over here. We're going to show them respect by really planning it out. And there have been past state visits where I feel like I'm thinking of, some of Obama's state visits where it was kind of, shoddy and thrown together. And
Not
I
this
feel
one.
like these are really done well. And I mean, even the military presentation, the flyover, it was just really so incredible.
Well, it's great to hear that the Trumps, our president and first lady, are working in tandem to present such a good, respectful welcome to those visitors and hopefully some future ones as we work towards a lot of the business of foreign policy. This was kind of a heartwarming high note, I think, where all the normal people could go, well, that was nice at the end. And Link, I'm so glad that you were there and that we could talk to you about it.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on that
guys.
opportunity.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Thank you, Annie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Spot On with Link Lauren is the podcast. Subscribe. You will love it.